Be more excited to kick it off with draft here this morning. It's time to put the pedal to the metal. Marshall and Paul, take it away.
Thank you, Maria. Welcome to the booth here at Pro Tour Ether Drift. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. And of course, this is the time where the rubber meets the road.
Sure.
It is, though, right? This is the point of the tournament where the players have to get really serious. A lot of prep, a lot of time has gone into sitting down for their first draft. And as we know, the first draft actually dictates a lot about how the rest of their tournament potentially could go. Getting off to a good start here is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a pretty deep format. And, you know, the games do go long, so you're going to get to see long, grindy games where you get to see a lot of skill expression. You get to see the players who have been drafting for a long time. I think the more experienced drafters are going to have a huge edge coming into this format.
Javier Dominguez is going to be our featured drafter. He has been expressing his skill on opponents for a long time now. And coming in off of a World Championship / Player of the Year. We're going to get a chance to see him draft and see how he approaches this format. You can see the unlucky players who ended up being at his table and might have to play against a player of his stature. It looks like he's focused and ready to go.
He is, but Javier, he's been...
I'm Bruna, I'm just from Brazil. I'll be calling your draft. So let's get started. Pick up the pack labeled A. Remove the wrapper and count the cards face down.
As you can
Please
see, our Judge
verify you
Bruna
have
is doing
14
our
cards.
called draft here. This is where a judge will tell you each action that you take as you go to make sure that everything is done properly. And so what they're doing now is just simply counting out that the correct number of cards are there, and then we'll see pack one, pick one here from Javier. Let's get underway.
This is the most exciting part of the Pro Tour.
Friday morning Pro Tour
up the
draft,
pack.
pack
You
one,
have
pick
40
one. It doesn't get
seconds.
better than this. Let's
Does
see what
not.
he opens up.
All right, I see a right Zen.
Right Zen pulled to the front immediately, and a Canyon Vaulter as well.
Yeah, there's also a Monument to Endurance, which is a really nice payoff if you want to be in the cycling deck. But that's something that I want to have come to me instead of something I want to move into pack one, pick one.
Right, it's a bit of a niche archetype. It can work.
Absolutely.
It would be very bold, though, to take it here.
Right. Yeah, if it tables or something, you can maybe consider it, or if you
10
get it fifth or
seconds.
sixth pick. But here, Ride Zen seems to be the safest pick to
Oh,
me.
he does have it pulled up to the front,
It's powerful, but you know, if you
Moving
if you look at a card like Ride Zen, it's just you can
Draft.
splash for it too. It's just a really solid removal
Shuffle and
spell. I
pass
think that's what he
13
takes.
cards
White
to your
not
left.
being one of the stronger colors, but remember, you can still splash this. Green-white is still a powerful color combination, and starting with Ride Zen,
Pick
you
up the
could
pack.
do
You have
worse.
35 seconds.
So Ride's End, reasonable start here for the draft for Javier. Not what he would have wanted.
No, of
you know,
course.
something in the uncommon and rare slot might have been a little better, but. And it looks like he's got Broadcast Rambler pulled to the front.
There's an explosive getaway, which is really interesting, right? It's a 5-mana sweeper, but you get to save your own creature, which is nice. But then you have arguably one of Green's best common
Right.
in Run Over as well, and that's, of course, a color that a lot of people are going to be fighting over coming into this draft. It is pretty clear that it's the best color,
5 seconds.
but you can take the Broadcast Rambler if you want to stay white, right? You already first pick Ride Zen. Broadcast Rambler
Draft.
is the second best white common, in my
Shuffle
opinion,
and pass
so it's
12
not the
cards
worst
to
to
your
kind of
left.
just stay in one color and try to read the signals and get a better sense for what's open.
Curious to see how Javier approaches
Pick up the
green
pack.
in the
You have 30
format,
seconds.
as there wasn't really much to speak of in the first pack, and then
Ooh,
just to run over there.
it's a Bossry, third pick.
Ooh.
Yeah, and there's a Ranger's Ether Hive, which is a great kind of payoff in the Simic exhaust deck, but you need to have a ton of exhaustings. And based off of your first two picks, I think it's pretty safe to just take a third pick Bossry, solidify yourself in white, hope that nobody else, you're not really fighting anybody else for white, because
5
that
seconds.
white isn't deep enough where it can really support 3 drafters. I mean, I don't even know if it could support 2.
Draft.
1.5
It's
is
really
probably the
shallow.
number. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Shuffle and pass
Bossry hits the
11
pile
cards
here.
to your left.
If you're going to be in white, this is a reasonable start.
Yeah, absolutely. I try to avoid
Pick up the
white
pack.
when
You
possible,
have
but when you do
25
get a
seconds.
third pick Bossry, that's a pretty good sign that you're going to probably see more white cards moving forward.
Speaking of, do we see any here?
Some interesting blue cards. There's a Broadside Barrage, which is a premium removal spell, but of course that's 2 colors off of what you currently have as a base. So
Right.
it's kind of rough. right? If you
5
first pick the
seconds.
Monument, maybe you could take it here, but there's either the Leonian Surveyor there, there's also Risen Necro Regent, which is
Draft.
interesting for the black-white speed deck, but looks
Shuffle and
like
pass 10 cards to your left.
Just going to keep it simple.
just stay the course to your Surveyor, totally fine 2-mana play, right? You get to start your engines early if you're aggressive. 2-drop for a 2/2 that has first strike when it attacks. That's kind of everything you want in the white strategy, because there's not really a slow white deck. White kind of wants to attack, and so Surveyor is a totally fine 2-mana play for that deck. But curious to see, I mean, just based on what we saw out of that pack, there was also the Risen Necro Regent. Now, if you are looking to play the speed mechanic or the speed deck, that is one of the best payoff cards. Where I play against a speed deck, oftentimes the payoffs are just like, they don't look that exciting.
No.
But then when they get to max speed and then on turn 5, they start tapping all their lands, and I'm like, uh-oh. If they play the 5/4 and they get to make a zombie every single turn, then you're talking.
Yeah, that's a classic build around payoff. All right, looks like we have one of our players just step away from the table for a moment here, but we're back in action.
Pick up the pack. You have 25 seconds.
Okay, there's a
Ooh.
Dune Drifter. And is that Road Rage as well?
Yeah, it's a pretty late Road Rage. 5th pick Road
Yeah.
Rage. Now, this is the interesting part. Boros is the worst color combination in the format, but getting a 5th pick Road Rage could be a sign. Road Rage is a very, very solid removal spell that you could be interested in
5
playing.
seconds.
But Dune Drifter is also pretty strong. And you did see the Risen Necro Regent in the previous pack, so that could
Draft.
also be a sign that you could move
Shuffle
into
and
black.
pass
So
9 cards
that
to
is
your
kind of a
left.
pivotal pick there, right? You either take the Road Rage or the Dune Drifter, and that will really kind of shape which
Pick up the
direction you
pack.
end up going.
You have 20 seconds.
Goes with the Road Rage. Like you said, it is a late one and a 3rd pick boss tree. I mean, if you're going to be red-white, this does seem to be what you need to happen, right?
Right.
You need premium rares and uncommons and stuff coming to you in the middle part of the pack.
5 seconds.
Yeah, and Javier just needs to hope that the red and white uncommons continue to flow here, because just a red-white deck with commons,
Shuffle and pass 8
No way.
cards to your
it just
left.
doesn't work out, just because the commons they fall off a cliff, honestly.
They
when you
really
look
do.
when you look
Pick
at
up
those
the
two
pack.
colors,
You have 20
the
seconds.
premium commons, the top 2 commons are okay, but once you start, it's just a bunch of filler 2-mana level creatures.
And it's a
so-
hostile environment for aggressive decks as well. Everything, it feels like every other creature has Death Touch or Reach.
Yeah.
Or 4 toughness or whatever. You
5
just can't seem to
seconds.
get through once you get to turn 3 or 4.
Yeah, it's really hard to push through damage.
That's right. All right, well,
Draft.
Night Market's going to hit the
Pass
top here.
7 cards to your left.
Little mana fixing, maybe keeping the options open. We saw Scoured Barons the
Pick up the
pick
pack.
prior
You
to
have
that.
15
So,
seconds.
you know, maybe Javier's still keeping options open. Only the 1 red card right now still.
Okay, that's an interesting card. That is a fairly late End Rider
5
Spike Spitter.
seconds.
In the red-white aggressive deck, you do have the Leonin Surveyor. So if you can get to maximum speed and
Draft.
use that as a card advantage
Pass 6
engine,
cards to
I
your
mean,
left.
you know, if you're getting kind of signposty uncommons
pack,
late,
you have
this
10
could be the
seconds.
lane that you can end up in. Now notice,
Oh,
what is that?
that's a monument.
But you're white. I guess you
Yeah.
take it here, but it's
Draft.
not doing a whole lot
Pass
here. You
5
don't have a whole
cards
lot
to
of
your
cycling.
left.
The monument is really good in blue-red, but
Pick up the
he's
pack,
so
you
heavy
have
on
10
white. I mean,
seconds.
Yeah, maybe it's just not destined. That was the monument that Javier opened. He wheeled it.
yeah.
I wonder,
Draft.
it makes me wonder
Pass 4
about
cards
going
to
into
your
pack
left.
2 where Javier's mind state will be, because he picked
Pick up
that
the
very
pack. You have
quickly.
5
Yeah,
seconds.
if the draft doesn't go well, right, and you start seeing more cycling payoff
Draft.
cards,
Yeah.
I can see moving in that direction.
Pass
It's just a
3
really
cards to
tough
your
ask
left.
right now, given that Javier's base white. If
up
Javier
the
was base
pack. You
blue
have
or
5
base
seconds.
red, then that would, or because he only has a handful of red cards, he's
That's
mostly
right.
base white.
Draft.
It's just kind of really tough to
Pass
pull off
2
the
cards
cycling
to your
deck if you're
Pick up
red
the
white.
pack. You have 5 seconds.
I mean, what even cycler, like he has boss?
Boss recycles and all the red. There's
pass
a
the
bunch
last
of red
card.
cyclers, but the problem is
But
there's not
I'm
a
saying,
ton
what
of
does he
white.
You have now
have?
60 seconds
Right
to
now,
review
he
your
just has a
picks.
boss recycle. So.
Okay, right. So let's take a quick look at the pack here. This is the portion in between packs where the players get to review their picks. You're not allowed to look at that pack in the middle. You know, if you go to a local game store and draft, you know, you can just take a look. If you draft on Arena or Magic Online, I mean, you'll just have the picks right in front of you. But at a professional level draft, you actually get an allotted amount of time to go over your picks, and then they're put face down again, and you don't get to look until after the next pack.
So, at the very least here, Javier seems to have reasonable curve with some, you got the trick in the burner rocket, and you do have an interactive spell here as well. So I think the first thing here, you're just seeing a bunch of white and red cards, and of course we all know what white and red cards want to do. You want to attack, but he did pick up that late monument. That means nobody's interested in doing the cycling thing. So if it's wide open and you do get another monument or some other big signpost card, then you can maybe perhaps look to pivot, but it's going to be tough because that's a lot of playables you're going to need to get to be able to actually get a playable deck, given that you have so many white cards already.
Now, this is a key inflection point here, Paul, in every draft, particularly at this point where you've gotten to the end of pack number 1. And you're not 100% sure exactly where you're going. It's actually rare that you know exactly both of the colors that you're going to pick and that you're completely convinced that that's where it's going to go. So let's just take one quick minute here before we get into pack number 2 to kind of map out some of the directions maybe that this draft could go. And, this is one of those things where you might have some dreams, you might have some wishes, right? So let's start with the commons. What are some of the cards that Javier might have in his mind that he hopes to pick up going forward?
Yeah, so these are some of the best commons if you're looking to be red and white. You see the Lightning Strike and Ride's End, of course. They're just premium removal spells that you want. But notably, one of the biggest risers is Thunderhead Gunner. This card is just fantastic in a format where you always want to be doing things with your mana. This is a 5-mana 4/5 reach creature, blocks absolutely anything, and then if you ever just draw extra lands in the late game, you can rummage that away. Additionally, he got that 9th pick monument, right? So if you do open up something like a Thunderhead Gunner at common, well, maybe you can find enough ways to rummage and cycle where even in your red-white deck, you can find a way to get that monument back into the deck, because if you have 9, 10-ish cyclers in your deck, it's a very powerful build around artifact.
Yeah, it's really, Thunderhead Gunner threads the line between all of the things that Javier may be trying to do here going into the next pack. What about for uncommons? Let's take a look at what Javi might have in mind going forward. Well, there's some raw power for you.
Right, so just, we'll save the Detention Chariot here, but just looking at Glory Heath Lynx and Outpace Oblivion, these are some of the best uncommons in white and red. You want to be aggressive, you want to start your engines, there's some nice payoffs here. Glory Heath Lynx, probably the best white uncommon in the entire set. Just, you play that thing on turn 2, and you're on the draw, you just look at that thing and you're just like, you have a 2-mana 2/2 in your hand, you're like, man, I am not going to win. They're just going to get a bunch of lands. But the really interesting uncommon that I think Javier could open is Detention Chariot, because we did see the monument there. So if you want a cycling sub-theme, this is the perfect card. This is a perfectly powerful artifact that you can play, but it has cycling, right? And that's really important. So now you have a cycler that's very, very playable, that's very powerful and a nice top-end card. So if you can open a Detention Chariot, maybe we can see a world where you can do a little bit of the beatdown stuff, but also have a nice late-game cycling engine as well.
Let's go big here, Paul. Commons, uncommons, what's on the wish list? What kind of things would you want to see if you were in Javier's seat? If you left unchecked, what would you want to open?
Yeah, so the 2 cards here on the left are just clearly the best cards in white and red. Perilous Snare, just fantastic removal spell, one of the best rares in the set. It just gets everything. It starts your engines, and whenever you get to maximum speed, you just start distributing +1/+1 counter, so that's really great, particularly in a red-white deck where it shouldn't be too difficult to get to max speed. House Squad Heavy, also just incredible, 3-mana 2/3, another start your engines card, and particularly in red-white where you have a good number of vehicles, when you make that 1/1 token, you can crew the vehicle, so your goblin just doesn't attack to its death, which is really nice and allows you to build that army. And then this is a fun one. He already has 1 copy of Monument to Endurance, so why not a second one, right?
I like it.
Once you have a second one, you have a legitimate game plan, and that might be enough reason for you to try to pivot and draft the cycling deck.
Yeah, there you go. So that's some of the things that maybe is going through the mind of Javier Dominguez. But as we know, in pack 2, packs can throw you a curveball, and sometimes you end up in places you didn't even expect. So this is just a little bit of that. But we can get back to the action here and see how this pack 2 actually goes for Javier.
Yeah, I think he generally just wants to probably stay the course with just a proactive red-white aggro deck. But you never know, right? Just depending on what you open, things can change. So there's a Canyon Vaulter in that pack. There's also a Push the Limit, which is a really interesting card if you do end up with a bunch of cycling vehicles. Right now, he doesn't have any. But there's also a Lightning Strike, which is a really, really strong removal spell. So it looks like he's got Lightning Strike and Canyon Vaulter. And I think a lot of people initially in the format would have been like, oh, you just slammed the Lightning Strike. but Javier also considering the Canyon Vaulter. He already has a Broadcast Rambler, so
5
that's
seconds.
an excellent combination, just having a 5-4 flying vehicle.
I think I would take the Vaulter
Draft.
over the Strike here. Also,
Shuffle and pass
he does
13
have
cards to
quite a
your
few
right.
more white cards that he really wants to play versus the red. He has about equal number of cards total, but
Pick up the pack, you have 35
you know,
seconds.
cards like Bostry and stuff make you really want to solidify your chances in white.
Yeah, absolutely. You just want to get to a good start. Oh,
Captain Howler.
I mean, no way you take that, right? Well, let's see what the rest of the pack has. It doesn't look like there's a ton of other good red or white cards. So it is the most powerful card in this pack. But if you take this in your red-white, the thing is, red-white is aggressive, right? If you take the Captain, you are
Right.
moving in a completely different direction because your mana is going to mess with you, and you won't be able to curve out as properly. Now, this could be the,
5
this
seconds.
pack isn't very strong, so you
Right.
could speculate on this and maybe go, you know what,
Draft.
maybe I can do the cycling thing. Nobody's in it.
If Javier
Okay.
wanted to do it, would it require effectively letting go of white?
You could perhaps go into 3 colors. You do have a night market,
Right.
but you just no longer turn into an aggressive deck, or it's a lot
Shuffle
harder
and
to be an
pass
aggressive deck,
12 cards
given
to
that
your
you're going to
right.
be splashing this card. But
Pick
of
up the
course, we
pack,
still don't
you
know if
have
he's going to
30
play it. But
seconds.
Captain Howler is certainly an extremely powerful card.
Right.
So he's going to be on the lookout for some mana fixing, maybe another night market
Oof.
or a land that taps for blue mana.
Wow, not much in this pack either. Geez, pack 2, pick 3? Wreck Remover?
It cycles for
5
2
seconds.
mana.
Course?
Collision Course is okay.
Sure.
Shuffle and pass 11
I guess you
cards
take
to your
collision.
right.
Whoa.
Boy, you take Wreck
All
Remover.
right.
All right.
We have pivoted, and now Javier is looking like he might
Pick up
move
the pack. You
into
have
blue-red
25
cycling,
seconds.
perhaps Jeskai cycling. We'll see. Okay, there's a call it in.
Call it in. Okay.
Oh.
This will give us an idea of what Javier's thinking about this blue splash.
Right,
Because if he's serious about it at this point, you need to take
5
that land.
seconds.
yeah, if you're looking to do the cycling,
Wow, he is gonna take
because
Tranquil
call it in is a
Code.
perfectly fine
Totally.
2-drop in the Boros aggro deck.
Shuffle and pass
And
10
all right, I
cards
guess
to your
we're
right.
moving into
What are we
Jeskai?
moving into?
Well, he took the
Jeskai
cove.
Pick up the pack.
cycling?
You have
Jeskai
25
cycling.
seconds.
I'm just wondering where this leads to. Like, this is not an obvious deck. Just if you haven't had a chance to draft the format yet, this isn't one of the go-tos.
No, absolutely not. Well, you're just going to be looking for things with cycling.
Yeah.
You have the Captain, you have the Monument here, or just powerful cards in a vacuum, and now you don't need to care as much about trying to start your engines
5
and get to max
seconds.
speed anymore. This is a completely different deck that Javier is looking to perhaps draft here. But
Second
Draft.
Broadcast Rambler.
yeah, that card is just good. 5 mana,
Just
you get a
solid
Thopter,
card.
5/4.
It doesn't
yeah.
really fit much of the maybe theme,
Right.
except for that it's just good and
Shuffle
costs
and
white
pass 9
mana.
cards to
Right,
your
just
right.
just a just
You
a
may pick
power
up the
level
pack.
pick. You just
Yeah.
put
have
this in your
20
deck.
seconds.
Let's see what we find here. That's a Cloudspire Sky Cycle.
Yeah, and there's
Sure.
also a nesting bot if you want it to be the really aggressive deck, but I don't think that's where Javier's looking to be. This looks more like a mid-rangey, potentially
5
almost
seconds.
combo-ish type deck. So the Sky Cycle just makes a lot more sense.
Draft.
Solid card.
Yeah.
Again, the mix here are like kind of all-in cyclers or just solid red-white cards.
Right.
And that's a tough balance to pull off.
Yeah, I mean, I've drafted this format over 40 times at this point. I don't think I've had a red-white cycling deck just yet here.
No, there's just not enough cycling in white to support.
Right. This is tough. And you know what? Drafts in this format are a lot more difficult, and I've had most of my train wrecks where I'm not a base green deck. And right now, it's pretty clear green isn't open. Everybody knows it's the best color, and when you
Shuffle and
don't
pass
see it
8
and you try to
cards
put
your
together a deck
left.
that's in
Pick up the
red
pack.
and
You
white,
have 20
it's
seconds.
really difficult.
All right, pick 7 here out of pack 2.
Are we taking Howlers heavy?
Colors heavy. That actually costs blue to cycle, right? One in
Yeah.
a blue, like that's not even a colorless
5
cycler.
seconds.
Yeah, the thing is, if you play that, like your mana is just going to be a total train wreck. You like.
Draft.
I'm okay
Pass
taking
7
a bunch of the
cards to
2
your
mana,
right.
the 2 colorless mana cyclers, but Howler's heavy is rough.
Pick up
I
the
do
pack, you
like the
have
card.
15
It's definitely
seconds.
overperformed for me. But if you're looking to splash this card, then things get a lot dicier.
One of the benefits of being multicolored but
seconds.
also cycling are the colorless cycling costs that at least let you do something. I mean, in
Pass 6
current
cards
era
to your
limited
right.
cycling a card for 2 mana
Pick
for
up the pack, you
no
have
other
10
effect, like
seconds.
just getting the
Right.
card, is more or less unacceptable. Like that is too slow, but this is even harder.
All right,
Trade the Helm has cycling.
but there's a push
Is
the
there a
limit.
push the limit?
There is a push the
Draft.
limit here, but we'll note
Pass
that
5
right
cards
now,
here,
I took it.
he took it. It's got a lot of
Pick up the
upside,
pack,
but
you
you
have
need
10
to pick up the
seconds.
cycling vehicles. If you don't, it doesn't
to.
really do a whole lot, but this does act as a legitimate win condition. Now, Sky Crash getting it
more
this late,
cycling.
very, very nice. That's just a really, really solid card with cycling.
Draft.
But Javier's
Pass
going to
4
be looking
cards to your
for
right.
some cycling vehicles to make this work.
Pick up the pack,
thing
you
with
have
a
5
card like
seconds.
Broadcast Rambler is, I mean, oftentimes it's just going to be in play and it won't die,
Draft.
right? So
Pass 3 cards
you
to your
want to
right.
pick up the cycler. So that's going to be what Javier's
Pick up
going to
the
be
pack,
looking for
you
if
have
he
5
wants to get pushed to
seconds.
limit into his deck.
You're going to need a
Draft
lot of
and pass
discard
2
outlets
cards
to
to
get an
your right.
Apocalypse Runner in
You
for
may pick
the
up the
push
pack,
the
you have
limit.
5
Right.
seconds.
Like we're deep here.
Yeah.
This could get sketchy.
Draft.
This
and
pack
pass
2
the
was
last
rough.
card.
Really
here
tough.
for
I mean, if
Javier.
I'm in
You have
Javier's
now
seat,
90
I am
seconds to review
worried.
your packs.
Yeah, he didn't even really get any good white cards out of this pack, despite
He got a
twi-
Canyon Vaulter, like
got a
pick
Rambler.
2 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
not
it.
much.
Yeah, so this is tough. Javier's a little bit all over the place here. Kind of has some semblance of an aggressive red-white strategy, but also has some cycling stuff. There's a push to limit that likely won't make it unless you pick up some good cycling vehicles here. There's a little bit of mana fixing. You do have the Tranquil Cove and the Night Market. So with, if you just want to splash the Captain, then maybe you can get away with playing 1 island, something along those lines. But
It feels, like if you look at the average power level of the cards, it's close enough to a
Right.
functional deck. But game plan wise, they feel so disparate. I mean, there's some overlap with a couple of the build arounds that Javier has. But the problem is you've got this like build around world that he's dabbling in, but then you have this very baseline red-white aggressive deck that doesn't overlap with that very much at all. And
Yeah.
neither are fully fleshed out here. for
right.
him.
Yeah, it's tough because every time you make a pick of, do I take a 2-mana creature or a cycling card, right? And if you keep going back and forth, I think overall you end up with a weaker deck just because you
Right.
kind of your strategies are a little disjointed here.
Right, think of some of the curves, right? Like a
Right.
bossy Canyon Vaulter, Monument to
This is the end of
Endurance,
the
right?
review
Or,
period. Please
you're
put all
curving
your
out and then
cards
you
in a
draw
single
Howlers
face-up
heavy that
pile.
you can at best cycle. It's just, it gets awkward really
Yeah.
quickly. I think this pack 3 is going to
You
need
may
to
now
be
pick the
very
last
kind
pack.
to Javier to salvage
Remove
this.
the wrapper and count the cards face down.
Yeah, we'll
Verify
note though,
again you
I'm
have 14
I'm trying to
cards.
think about what Javier could have done differently so far. It was just a tough seat.
Very tough seat.
It's not there were
I
it's,
do not envy that
it's
seat.
not like there were just standout signpost
No.
cards that you just
Also,
slam
by the
and
way,
you just
Paul,
take.
Green cards?
Yeah, no green
We've
cards.
seen like 1 run over.
Right.
Like no good rares, no good uncommons, and not even any of the
Pick up
like
the pack,
6
you have 40
really great
seconds.
commons outside of that 1 run over.
Yeah, and he also wanted some maybe cycling payoffs, right? Or Marauding Mako would have been fantastic for him to be able to pick up, but didn't get that. Just got the captain there. So
He's got Ride's End pulled to the front.
there's also a Gallant Strike, and I'm kind of liking
Oh.
the Gallant Strike because it lets you do both, right? It's a nice removal spell, somewhat comparable in power level to Ride's End, but also gives you the cycling where if you do have the captain or the monument in play, there's a lot more upside there.
You're not going to get a lot of playable / good white cards with also cycling on them. I
seconds.
think you
Yeah.
have to take it.
Yeah, and this is a format where it's really important to be able to kill large creatures.
Draft.
Yes.
So Gallant Strike
Shuffle
is
and pass
really strong
13
in this
cards
format,
to your
whereas
left.
maybe in some others it wouldn't be.
That's right. Yeah, first Gallant Strike has to be in here, especially over the second Ride's End there
Pick up the pack. You
for
have
Javier. So he
35
picks up
seconds.
Gallant Strike. Hey, that is actually a card that threads the needle between
Right.
these kind of 2 disparate archetypes that he's dabbling in. Oh,
Okay. That gives us a game plan. I mean, there's a push to limit in Javier's side or main deck maybe, but there's also Sky Crash, which is just a really good card, right?
yeah. Could he?
I think he has a higher chance of wheeling the Sky Crash because he got one super late.
Yeah, I
in
think
pack
you're
2.
right. Even though triple white's tough,
But this does give Javier a legitimate win
seconds.
condition because this is kind of a rough draft. I think you just
Wow.
have to try to get lucky here. Take the flagship. It's a
Draft,
cycler.
shuffle
And
and
then
pass
if you
12
get enough
cards to your
other
left.
vehicles that cycle, you can push the limit. Imagine pushing this to the limit and getting in, you can just kill your opponents out of nowhere.
This,
So,
Pick up the pack.
this had
You
to be
have
one of
30
the
seconds.
better pickups. If you're going to thread this needle,
right.
that is one way to actually do it.
All right, there's a Clamorous Ironclad, which is really nice as well.
And a boosted sloop.
And a boosted sloop, which is really powerful, but it's another blue card. So do you want to take the blue card here just to make sure that you have a good source of discard, or do you want to just take the Clamorous Ironclad, which is a guaranteed cheap cycler to go into your deck? And then you can also just take Crash and
5
Burn
seconds.
if you feel like you need another interactive spell.
I like the sloop because it feels like there's not going to be enough
Draft,
cycling.
shuffle and
Like,
pass
so
11
again,
cards
I
to
don't
your
know
left.
if Javier is thinking,
Pick up
okay,
the pack.
red-white aggro
You have
or
25
red-white aggro
seconds.
with cycling sub-theme or red-white aggro with cycling sub-theme plus push the limit
Right.
random win con. But if he is trying to do all of those things,
Yeah, the
then I
sloop-
think you want the sloop.
The sloop helps, and you have a Canyon Vaulter too to give it flying. So I can see a world where you can take that. So it looks like Javier's really leaning into
5
the
seconds.
cycling nature
Right.
of this deck, and that's kind of what we're going to see here. Now, there are a couple of interesting 4-mana
Draft,
Start Your Engine
shuffle and
cards,
pass
but
10
wow.
cards.
Another
your
Howler's
left.
Heavy, so that's 2 of those.
I am just curious how his mana is going to work. I'm really concerned about the mana here because
it
you are
doesn't.
you are just
25
straight up
seconds.
3 colors when you take that Howler's Heavy.
Right. He does have 2 fixers. One of them's a dual and one of them's a I could make it blue if I want.
Okay, that's a good aggressive card here. A great aggressive card even. Burnout Bastronaut. Embalmed Descendant also fantastic, but simply far too late to take anything that's white or black. But remember, there was
5
that point in the
seconds.
draft where Javier could have taken a red card or a black card.
Right.
And,
Yeah, way back.
Draft, shuffle and pass 9 cards to your left.
Yeah, he took that
Pick up the
road
pack,
rage,
you
and
have
that sent
20
him down
seconds.
this path.
Now, Burnout Astronaut is a great card if you're aggressive. If you're not, ooh, there's a Thunderhead Gunner. That's another
Oh.
perfect bridge card. It's just good in any deck, but particularly in a deck that's looking to cycle, right? Because
5
anytime you
seconds.
cycle, so if you just have this in play and you have one of your payoff cards, it is tremendous.
Yeah, and remember, if he
Draft,
does want to play push the
shuffle and pass
limit,
8
these
cards to
discard
your
outlets
left.
are ways to get these vehicles into the graveyard without
Pick up
having
the
to have
pack,
them
you have
die,
20
and for the
seconds.
ones that don't have cycling naturally.
Right, yeah. That's a super late Grim Bauble. I'm really shocked that that's still in the pack. It's one of the
Yeah.
best black commons in the set here, but looks like we're just going to go ahead and take an End Rider Catalyzer here.
Sure.
You know.
5 seconds.
Not a ton of fantastic max speed payoffs here for Javier, but
Yeah.
just a
Draft,
2-mana creature fills the
pass
curve.
7
And if he
cards
wants to get
your
these
left.
blue cards in, I think he's going to
Pick up
have
the
to
pack, you
like
have 15
minimize the
seconds.
maximum speed attempts.
Right. Oh, wow. Cloudspire Coordinator. That's a
Okay.
late one. Okay.
Hey, there's power level. I mean, sometimes you can just get power level.
Right. You just play this card, just a 2-mana
5
3/1 that
seconds.
scries 2 when you play it is perfectly strong. And then, of course, if you just run out some Broadcast Ramblers,
Yep.
getting
Draft.
an extra token is obviously very, very strong.
Man, if he can make this House of Cards stand up, he does have some powerful and potentially kind of out of the blue plays. Can you
Right.
imagine playing a few aggressive cards and then a monument, or your opponent thinking, well, my opponent's out of gas, they're
Right.
on, they're splashing blue for a couple of, rares or whatever, and then you just go push the limit and what? Where did that come from?
I will say this pack has been very, very good for Javier relative to the
You should be
first 2
passing
packs.
6
Look at
cards
his
to your
5th through 8
left.
picks.
Pick up the pack.
They're all
you
just
have 10
solid red and white
seconds.
cards. 5th pick Bastronaut, 8th pick Coordinator. Those are the types of things that you need to have happen to salvage this draft.
Do you think that there's a chance from a playables perspective? Oh, wow,
Draft,
Artillerist here too.
pass 5
that
cards
he
to your
just
left.
ends
Pick up
up
the
just
pack,
being
you have
red-white?
10 seconds.
Like that this whole blue foray ends up being not worth it?
Yeah, it really just comes down to kind of how many playables
If
he
he
ends
hits
up
the right
with.
number.
Because Javier's mana fixing is okay. He has a Tranquil Cove
Draft,
and a Night Market.
pass
It's not
4
perfect.
cards to your
I
left.
can see, the thing is, given
Pick up
what
the
he's
pack,
taken,
you have
he's
5
got to at
seconds.
least play the Captain and the Monument probably,
Okay.
right? And we
Because
will
of his picks.
Right, but
Yeah.
like, for example, that's why I
Draft,
wasn't a huge fan
pass
of the
3
second
cards to
Howler's
your
Heavy
left.
pick,
Yeah.
just because I didn't think it
Pick
was
up
that
the pack, you
realistic
have
that you're
5
going to put that in
seconds.
your deck.
And look at his pack 3. I mean, that just looks like good red-white stuff.
Right.
Right? Like, if his other packs look like that, I would assume
Draft,
that these blue
pass 2
cards
cards to
probably
your
wouldn't
left.
make the cut. But I agree that
Pick up the
based on the
pack, you
way
have
that we
5
saw
seconds.
where he took those cards, it was clear he has those in mind.
Yeah.
Draft, and pass the last card.
And those discard outlets, I mean, I have to say, I think that Thunderhead Gunner was like critical if he wants to do these other strategies.
Yeah. And he tabled the Clamorous Ironclad, which is great for the deck.
Oh, that's huge.
Tabling the Magmakin Artillerist, just having another cycler to play on color also helped. Now, again, this is a Boros cycling / aggro-y deck. And I will say, though, this was just kind of his seed. I think if you look at the cards that Javier saw, very clearly you needed to be in some Mardu color combination.
Yes.
And he ended up in red-white. I think he could have had an okay black-white deck as well, given that we saw some of those good black cards table as well. Possibly even Rakdos, but something in that lane. But those are the colors, especially red and white, that aren't so deep. But I think Pack 3 did bail him out a little bit because he needed a lot of playables.
Yeah.
And getting picks 5 through 8 and then tabling some cards, that was really, really huge for him to actually put together what, you draw the Monument, you draw the Cyclers, maybe you can put something together.
Maybe something can come together. Yeah, the two big moments for me were, do you take Road Rage or the Dune Drifter? Basically, do you want to pair red or black? He then took a Scoured Barrens right after it, perhaps signaling that there was a little like, well, I want to keep this option open, but ended up going in here. And then, of course, the next stage is, well, what did you actually come up with here? Because this is going to be a difficult deck to put together and have it run right. You may have draws that look like one end of the spectrum, say the aggressive end, and then they end up being more of the combo side. And those can be very difficult things to put together. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, though, we'll be into round number 1, and we get to see this deck in action. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.